Good
evening. Janet. We can hear
Janet. You can hear me. Good.
Good evening.
Are we still waiting for more people to come in?
Maybe just a 6:05.
Good evening, Rajat. How are you, Rajat, this evening?
Hey, good evening, Janet. How are you? I'm good.
Good. Excellent. Good. All right. Okay, in the interest of time, I think we can go ahead and start. Rajat, thank you very much once again for coming, for honoring us with your time and your expertise. We're very delighted to listen to what you have to say today. So I'm just going to quickly do the protocol and speak to who our speaker is today. We're very lucky to have in our midst an expert coach with many years of experience. We have Mr. Rajat Garg. He is indeed the founder and the leadership coach of Coach to Transformation, which is the largest coaching company in India. And it spreads also across 8 countries, and it has a global network of many coaches. That's his company. Rajat is a master certified coach for ICF. He's also a board certified coach as well. He's also a certified mentor coach and a supervisor as well. He's certified in many areas, in MBTI, in DISC, in 360-degree assessments, and he does have 2,500 plus hours of coaching. He's worked across many industries, financial services, manufacturing, universities, retail, pharmaceuticals, textiles, technology, and even NGOs as well. He does focus on the who of the client by working towards self-awareness and recognizing the strengths of his clients. Okay, now in his corporate and advisory capacity, he is currently the global board of the, he sits actually on the global board for ICF, being the largest coaching body to date. And he has over 18 years of experience, you know, in the industry. He was an ex-vice president of Lead IT Consulting. He was also a board member of the ITT Bombay alumni. And he's also actually the founder of ICF Bangalore chapter. And he's a member of Global Ethics Commission, the committee which actually sits with ICF. Let us please warmly welcome Mr. Rajat Garg, who's going to be talking to us today about coaching awareness. Everything that you want to know about coaching and credentialing and getting your certification. So Rajat, you're very welcome today. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Janet, for the warm welcome. And it's always interesting to hear about yourself, right? So when somebody else talks about you, it's very interesting to keep hearing, oh, you know, did I do that? No, I was there. Okay, fair enough. But thank you so much for the welcome, and everyone here as well. So the way I do these sessions is, while I have a presentation, but I would like to be more conversational, right? So I'm happy to answer questions in the middle of things, and if something makes sense, doesn't make sense, go ahead and ask me questions. You can put it on chat as well as unmute yourself and ask me a question. For me, it's easier to answer rather than getting into a presentation mode, right? So, but just to trigger the thought process, let me share a presentation. Is there anything that I need to answer? Any thoughts, feeling that I need to look for before I start? Anybody has anything else to ask me?
I would suggest at this point, if you have a burning question while Rajat is speaking, kindly put it in the chat box.
Sure.
So that we can then look at that as we go along. Otherwise, if there's an opportunity to speak and we have the time, yes, please show your hand and we will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I keep looking at the chat box as well. So if you're writing something, I'll get to know. Thank you so much. Again, so I think the topic for today is coaching awareness, right? And I felt representing ICF at some level as well, because I am the current chair for ICF Global. And I thought I'll take up a couple of slides on ICF before I get into the more specific agenda for the day. So what you have heard of ICF till now, I'm assuming, it's the International Coach Federation, as the name says. And there has been a lot of focus by ICF in the, this is the 25th year of ICF. We are celebrating the 25th anniversary this year. And ICF started as a small bunch of people together and working and coming together as coaches. And as of today, it's one of the largest bodies out there. After 25 years, we felt that, we have been focusing on the coach too much as the ICF. And are we doing enough on the coaching front? Are we being seen as the body which looks at coaching globally itself and not just the coach? So going forward this year, at the start January this year, we renamed ourselves. It doesn't seem to be a big change in the name. All we did was add a ing, and it changed the entire perspective for ICF. We became International Coaching Federation instead of International Coach Federation, which basically means that we focus on the entire domain of coaching going forward and not just the coach, right? And the way we are introducing this whole coaching federation, right, is we have created 6 new entities in ICF as bodies, which focus on each and every aspect of ICF, right? Starting with, we have the ICF, this is Thought Leadership Institute. The institute will focus on a lot of future concepts around coaching. Come out with white papers, come out with new thinking around coaching. What next in the world of coaching? What's the future of coaching? Right? That's where the ICF Thought Leadership Institute comes in. The ICF Professional Coaches continue to be the body which represents the members and chapters across the globe. The ICF Foundation is the social piece of ICF, wherein we are covering all this pro bono social networking and the expansion of and the democratization of coaching across the globe. We have the credentials body, the coach training body separately, wherein anybody who's applying for credentials will go through this legal entity going forward. It will set new policies for credentials, make new standards for credentials, similarly coach training. And finally, the biggest one is the ICF Coaching in Organization. Right? This is a body which will focus on organizations. Organizations will be member of this body and not just an individual coach, right? So the organizations, like Accenture or AT&T, they will become members of this organization. And people from these organizations will sit on the board of this organization and drive the agenda of coaching across the globe within organizations. So this is a specific entity looking at that piece. And then above all this, we have a global enterprise board, which is ensuring that we still work as a one ICF across the. We still focus on a similar same strategic plan, and this global enterprise is where I sit as of now, and working with the entire board across these organizations. So, any quick questions on this, because this is a very, very important and big change that has happened recently in ICF, and some of you who attended as a chapter leadership would have heard about this in the GLF as well. So any quick questions on this one? I'm ready to answer. Okay, I see something coming up. Will each of these organizations be replicated at chapter level? No, the chapters continue to function the way they are. The organizations will not be replicated, but I think in some way or format, you might reorganize, the chapters might reorganize their management committee into these kind of objects, like re-looking at the structure of their own organizations and saying, hey, do we need to have our own thought leadership concept, right? So there are research part of a chapter as of now, but hey, are we looking at future and what are we creating? How are we collaborating with organizations to create a future of coaching? So maybe relook at the way a chapter is working in terms of how they're aligned, what roles are available in a chapter. In the long term, that will be beneficial and it will just flow from the bigger roles into these roles as well. Thank you, Landry, for asking this. Anything else? So with what happens, when coaching starts in an industry, right? So I come from, I live in India. I, started my whole journey in India itself. And this, like, as many years back that I'm talking about, coaching was pretty new in the market. There were people who became coaches, because of their experience. People who had a lot of experience in the industry, maybe a CEO, maybe a COO, or a CHRO or HR head kind of people who knew how to work with people, help them become better, right? And that was something that they were good at. So they started calling themselves coaches in the market and started working with the industry, and they provided a initial impetus towards coaching in the industry, right? Then organizations like ICF came into these markets. This is the same cycle that repeats in each market. And while ICF is one of the organizations, you have others as well. And organizations like ICF come into the system and they start creating standards for such things. The market maturity starts going up in terms of understanding, is this the definition of coaching now, according to this organization? There are many definitions existing today and will continue to exist. But when a structured organization comes and says, hey, we have worked with a lot of coaches, we have seen the industry for a long time, 25 years in the case of ICF, and they say, we believe this seems to have become the definition of coaching now. And in order for a coach to provide service to its clients, these are some of the competencies that are required.
We can't hear. Oh, I think there's a connection problem. I think we have a connection problem. Let's just hold on a bit. Okay.
Hey, sorry.
Okay, Rajat, we can hear you now. Yes,
yeah,
thank you.
Sorry, my internet just dropped suddenly. I don't know what happened. Okay. Sharing again. So as I was saying, right, the coaches from this philosophy who start believing in this philosophy start going to corporates, to the people who are looking for coaching and out there, and start saying, hey, this is much more standardized, much more researched, so why not start looking at it? So what they start doing is create a demand for such requirements, right? At the same time, the supply is increasing. The coaches are, more and more coaches are aligning to that philosophy as well, because once that demand starts increasing for this philosophy, more and more people will start aligning to this. So it becomes a positive cycle of demand and supply. More coaches create more awareness in corporates, more corporates start asking for more coaches like these, right? And you see an industry which has started growing in terms of maturity, and they start believing in the same philosophy after that. So I saw this in the last 6-7 years in India now, this kind of philosophy, and India is a huge booming market in coaching as of now, right? Almost every HR knows about ICF. Every HR knows to a certain extent about coaching now, right? And the demand has changed from saying, hey, we need a coach, to saying, hey, we need somebody who is aligned to an association or a body, a coach. I'll come to the concept of credentials in a minute, right? The second part that starts happening for a market maturity at that same time is, because there is structure and standards, the coaches start talking about ethics in coaching, which was before that non-prevalent in the industry. And we all know that coaching as an industry is not regulated by any law till date. So this is a self-regulated market completely. People like us, who all are coaches, self-regulate ourselves based on a certain ethics. So what ICF or EMCC and all these organizations bring on the table is a standard concept of ethics that a coach follows, right? So what the client experiences in the movement is a standardized concept of ethics. Everybody behaving the same manner. Everybody has the same moral set, same code of behavior out there. It becomes more, for them, more predictable what to expect from a coach, right? And then the third piece that starts happening in the industry is impact assessment of coaching. Till now, they were like, before that, it was all like, was there a shift happened? Yes, there was a shift happened, and that is all. Or give me a feedback on what happened. But then we moved on. Slowly, in this structured environment, we move into impact assessments. More and more clients start asking, hey, how do we quantify these results of coaching? How do we find a ROI for coaching? Now, I know you have been doing a great work. I've heard good things about my employee, but I'm spending so much. What's the ROI here? So the industry starts moving into ROI phase, impact assessments phase, and maybe ROE itself, return on investments or expectations. And finally, it comes down to credentials, right? Does a coach have a credential, and what level of credential does a coach have? Because what a credential is doing is telling others that this person went through an assessment. This person went through a whole process of learning, then got assessed at a certain level, and now has a credential which proves their quality and the standard that they bring in when they come to coach, right? So all these coaching bodies have different levels of credentials, including ICF, which has ACC, PCC, and MCC, and the market starts talking about that. While they might not still understand the difference between the three levels, but they will start saying, I need a credential coach now, right? So when you reach an HR head or a CXO, and they will start saying, hey, do you have a credential? While they might not understand, do you have a ACC or a PCC or MCC yet, right? That's the next level that happens in the industry, is when they start understanding the differences between the credentials. So if you look at the US market today, MCCs are given much more respect. There are in ICF around 1,200 MCCs across the globe out of the 35,000 members. So imagine, in US, what level they will be seen as, which is a very, very mature market, and saying, okay, you are an MCC, you must have done really something great and be an expert in this area to be called an MCC now. So the industry starts valuing the level of credential that you bring in, because they believe that you are much more an expert in the area of coaching now, right? And I won't say this as 100% concept saying, but I think from the value of you get paid better as well in the industry then, right? Because of that, if the industry recognizes the difference. So your valuation as a coach increases in the industry as you move from one credential to another. So this is over time how the maturity looks like in any industry. And then the next evolution comes in for the industry. So, something else will come in, and then you start looking at that piece. But typically, and as a market, Nigeria might go through the same cycle. So a quick question for people here is, where do you think Nigeria market is as of today in terms of maturity? What all is happening in the market as of now? Happy to hear as well as read comments. If I'm going too fast, let me know as well.
Hello, Rajat.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Yeah. Okay, so with regards to what's happening, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I must appreciate. With regards to what's happening in Nigeria, the awareness is growing, but there's still huge gaps. We keep hearing information about the fact that ICF as a body is still quiet. We've been in operation for 5 years in Nigeria, and we're still trying to create the awareness, have more advocacy about the need and the value of coaching and coaches. So yes, there is some impact, but there's still a huge gap, so to speak, in terms of what still needs to be done to create the awareness and to create the impact. So I think that's where we're at, really at the budding stage. I'd say we're at the budding stage, but there's an appreciation.
Yes. And you're going to the founders of this whole journey going forward, as this group of people that I see here will be the founders and create that next level in that industry. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Adora, for that. Landry says between awareness and ethics of the coach. Okay. Florence, I believe ICF has an impact and the awareness is budding. Okay, sure. So there's a lot more awareness being created as of now, and there's more required. I understand that. So I just wanted to explore saying when you say, Landry, between awareness and ethics, how much of ethics are we spoken about in the industry as of now? Come off mute and talk.
Yeah, thanks, Rajat. So I think that it's at the budding stage, the initial stage, where ethics is becoming part of the conversation. So awareness is still where the growth, I think with awareness will come that question, like you said, but it's beginning to come up. And just in a very few, one or two places, the issue of impact assessment, that the big multinational corporates are talking about this, but yeah.
Sure, thank you. And that is a very important point. The same thing happened in India as well. The MNCs started bringing the culture in India, right, around coaching. And they started putting in saying, hey, in other parts of the world where we have employees, we have this kind of coaches, and this is the culture, this is the structure that we follow. And they start bringing it into the industry here, in the local industry. So MNCs act as a big concept around, as well as creating awareness and adding value to the maturity of the market. Thank you for that. Any other thoughts around this in terms of the industry Nigeria is, and what are you seeing? Okay. Fair enough. I am assuming that everybody.
Yes. Let me quickly say something. Yes, I think what we are seeing a lot of is the fact that everybody's calling themselves a coach. And so being able to distinguish a coach from a coach is where we are right now, and where ICF really needs to step up in Nigeria. Okay.
So differentiation between what a coach is in terms of the credential and that piece has to be increased in terms of awareness in the industry. Fair enough, and that will happen as yes.
Okay, my own view is on like what the last speaker said, that everybody is calling themselves coaches, and I believe that if ICF can have an established ground, like a more established ground, to be able to reach out to other people that are certified and see ways in which they can work on differences and similarities to establish a more grounded community among coaches.
Yes,
thank you.
Florence, thank you so much for that. And I agree with that. While there is a job that the chapter has to do in terms of creating awareness, what I also see over time is the same people who used to coach earlier and just call themselves coaches and had no credentials now are coming to the coach credential part, and they are going through coach training because the industry is not giving them work here anymore, right? Because the industry is asking them and they're saying, I don't have a credential, and they're saying, hey, since we are now using all credential coaches, we need you to be credentialed as well. So I see a big trend in India as of now, wherein all those people are now getting into the credential path themselves. So you will see that happening as well as an industry. But yes, ICF, the chapters here, the coaches here, everybody played a role as a community to create that space. And it took almost 6 years to reach this stage now, wherein those people have to come and get a credential. And this is something that we, all of us learned from the global ICF and made it happen here. So every new region which is picking up in the world of coaching, they learn and go through this whole cycle faster than the other region which has. So in our case, it was 6 years. I'm assuming you guys might do it in next 3-4 years itself, right? and have the industry mature much faster, because there's just so much learning that you can get from the ecosystem. So yes, Florence, Janet, I understand the challenge. And the system takes care of it. You just keep on doing your work, keep on creating awareness as a chapter, do more and more events, do much, more interactions with the corporates out there, and you will slowly see the change in the system. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome. So from this, right, so when we talk about credentials, right, so a big question comes in, and why do you need a credential at all? So fair enough, it's a fair ask. How does a credential make a difference? Because this is going to be asked to you, all of you out here, saying, the clients might ask it, the other coaches who call themselves coaches will ask that, saying, why do I need a credential at all? Right. And Anushri, I'll come back to you in a moment, right? So one is, as I said, because of a rigorous process, the coaching body has, made you go through, which proves that you have done a fair amount of learning and then were assessed at a global level by a body, not just at a local level, not you choosing to call yourself something. There is a global body which measures you, assesses you at standards which are global. And when they give you the credential, anywhere across the globe, you go with that credential, you'll be treated at par with other coaches across the globe, right? And that's the beauty of having a credential from an association which is global and have done the standardization. The moment, and this is something that I see in a lot of coaches that I work with, I do create coaches, through our programs. And what I see is the credential acts as a validation point for a lot of them, saying, now I believe in myself as a coach. Somebody has assessed me, given me a credential, means I know something about this area now, right? It is not my own assumption that I have become a coach. So there is an external body which assesses me, and I am now more confident, and I know I can act and I can work as a coach in the industry, right? What it also does is, because of the competency framework that these organizations have, and all of them have that construct about saying, how have you become more skilled as a coach? How have you started understanding yourself as a coach, right? It helps you to better respond to the conversations that you are in with your clients, right? Your ability to figure things out is much faster, because you now know, if this is happening, then maybe I'm not doing this competency great. Maybe I need to work on my competency on that front, because I lack on this area. But you have something to measure yourself against, and your conversations will, once you are aware, everything changes in a conversation. As a coach, we all learn that, as you grow as a coach, the more you're aware of who you are, the better conversations that you will have as a coach out there. Your coaching, because you're following a competency framework and being assessed at that level, is obviously going to create much more evidenced, deeper impact. It is not just saying, hey, I made a difference to somebody's life. You can actually showcase saying there is evidence, because you have learned how to create evidence as well as part of competency. You have done your check-ins, you have asked those questions, you have created success measures out there for each conversation, and it gives you evidence that the system works, the process worked, and the person got something out of it, right? When somebody sees you, so this is more about self, right? Now let's get into the other part. When somebody sees you with a credential, right? Other professionals out there, it could be it could not be a corporate, but a person out there who's like, anybody. But when they see a credential with you, they trust you much more than anybody else, right? If I, who is not credentialed, go out there and say, hey, I will coach you, versus Janet, who is credentialed, goes out there and says, I will coach you, obviously the other person will trust Janet more because she's credentialed. She has a degree to put out there and say, I have learned something through a process, right? And as you know, the bullet points say that there are standards and ethics that I follow as a coach because I am credentialed, as well as I work at a certain level and standard in my coaching. I demonstrate a certain skill and knowledge, right? As the market maturity increases, your chances of getting hired by the organizations as a coach increases as well if you have a credential, right? Because this is going to happen. You know, you might see the market today and say, hey, nobody's asking credential. I'm telling you, next couple of years, organizations in your region will start looking for credentials for coaches, because that is a culture. They will also learn from everywhere else and say, hey, where are my credential coaches in Nigeria? And you will start running at that time to get a credential then. So it's, you know, so be prepared for the fact that your industry at some point, mostly around 2-3 years from now, will start asking majorly for credentials from you, right? And, you know, when you get hired by more organizations, the chance of you getting referred to more, you know, by the satisfied clients is obviously higher. So as of today, you know, I would still say 90% of my business comes from referrals out there, right? Because one HR head or one client passes my name to somebody else, right? And that is the world of coaching itself, because it's such an intimate work. It's such a personal work that you do with each client. They are the best people. You know, once they get satisfied with coaching, they will give your name to people around them anytime, right? You might do a lot of marketing. You might succeed initially to get, you know, some clients. But if you are a good coach, if you are a credential coach and you showcase impact, your brand will grow irrespective of marketing, right? You will go from one client to another and they will sell you for you, and they will pass on their trust to other people, right? So I'm going to take a pause again. There have been some questions and I'll try to answer them before I move forward. So Anushri, you said, how important do you think ICF credentialing is for, let's say, health coaches as opposed to executive coaches who work only with individuals and not in the corporate world? Oh, I would say it's the same, because my belief around coaching is every individual deserves the same level of coaching, irrespective of they are from a corporate, who paid for them, are they from a corporate, they paid from themselves, or it's a pro bono client, you're not getting even paid for it. You still, as a coach, need to give them the same level of coaching, the same standards you offer themselves. You're 100% as a coach. So, when, it's part of the ethics as well. What happens is, it happens very unconsciously. Most of the coaches don't recognize that when they work with a corporate client, they are much more alert. If a message comes from that corporate client on WhatsApp, I'll respond much faster to them, versus a pro bono client, I'll say, this can wait and let me answer it tomorrow, right? At that moment itself, you have changed the way coaching is being offered to those people, right? You have just told your pro bono client, since you're not paying me, I will not respond. I will not be giving you the same service levels, right? So it happens very unconsciously. It just happens. It's nothing that you intended. It's just as simple as saying, I'm not getting paid from this. I will respond, but I'll support. It's not that I'm going away, but the corporate client is much more important as well, right? So for health coaches or any coach out there, right? There are a lot of coaches out there. It's very important to follow a credential and a standard out there. It should not be different for different people. Tosin says, in India or other countries, are there key competitor global bodies for coaching who also credential? Yes, Tosin. So in India, we don't have, but globally, you will see the names that you might hear more often is EMCC, European Mentoring and Coaching Council, and the Association of Coaching. These are, I would say, the three largest bodies, and within these three also ICF is by far the largest in terms of presence across the globe, right? And the number of members. Both EMCC and AOC focus a lot more on Europe as a region, and they're very strong in those regions as well. But and beyond that, in other countries we know of, I know there are small coaching bodies which offer their credential. Like I'm a board certified coach with CCE in US, but it's one of those bodies, right? It doesn't have a large presence across the globe. Not many people will recognize the name of CCE outside US itself. So there are those kind of bodies existing in other countries. But if you look at global concepts, ICF and then the other EMCC and AOC at some level. Okay. The Anu says, I do agree that credential acts a validation point. Whilst it's still in its infancy, MCCs in Nigeria are beginning to request for credential. Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. Adora, a lot of individuals, even within the coaching community, are unclear about the difference between the terms certified and credential. Yeah. Thank you for raising that, Adora. Certified, and this one is again. So when I was part of the ICF ethics committee, and which is where we got the unethical cases coming to us, and we reviewed, and we sort of looked at the ethics and gave judgment on those at some level, and saying, was there a breach of ethics or not? So what happens? I've seen that concept of, I did a coach training, right? So I am certified as a coach. I am a member of ICF, so I'm an ICF certified coach, right? And that's the clubbing of name that happens. And I start putting it everywhere, saying I'm an ICF certified coach. The difference is you're not yet credentialed coach, right? Nobody has assessed you yet and given you a credential, right? And there's a huge difference between the certification and a credential itself. A certificate is just a learning process, but the credential is where you have been assessed at par with global people. And you have been declared at that global level, about 35,000 people across the globe, and said, you are at par with these 35,000 people now. Instead of let's say a training company giving you a certificate saying, now you are a certified this coach, right? Which is a very localized concept for that training company, and maybe within their members, you will be a certified coach. But the way I've seen in India, the certified coach concept has stopped working completely, and clients are asking for credential. They have understood there is something called credential, and they look for credential out there, right? What is a trained coach? That is trained by an ICF approved coach training provider. Does that count for a certified or credential also? So so I just answered that as well. So when you have finished your training, you're still from the training company's perspective, certified coach only. If they are giving you a certificate, some training companies might just give you a completion certificate, not even a certification, right? So it depends on, some companies will give you a life certified coach. So that might be used as a life certification course itself. But the credentialing will only happen once you have passed an assessment with a body out there. And the assessment could be different ways, right? So EMCC looks at case studies. You have to submit a 2,000 word document to EMCC as part of your application, which ICF does not. So different ways of assessment, but you have been assessed at peers at a global level then. And that is where the credentialing piece counts. I know, Falake, thank you. Thank you for asking. It added more flavor to it. Okay. Anything else on this whole credentialing concept? Right? This is very important for the maturity market as well. So any other questions, I'm happy to answer on that one. So I don't have many slides as well. So the next slide might be the last slide in my case. Okay. Why not another level between PCC and MCC? Malini, help me understand. Why do you feel there is a need?
The only thing is the journey seems from a 500 to the 2,500 big. It's like you need some in between to say, yeah, you're there. Somebody's monitoring you or something. But I think it's just personally, it's just a long journey. 500 was tough, but it was still okay. But now after PCC using MCC, will I get it in even another 5 years? So from that aspect, it's a big jump.
And from even a competency perspective, it's a big jump, yes. Right? It's a different level of an understanding of being a coach, the MCC level. And while I'm not sure I have the answer for this, but before the new rules came in, the level for PCC was 750 hours, not 500. Right. So after the new rules, it got reduced to 500. hours, right? Because you're supposed to calculate from the time you start the training. What I understand is a PCC level coach is taken as a pretty mature coach in the industry, right? Whereas MCC is like a journey wherein not every coach might need to do that journey. It's like a personal concept saying, I want to go to that level of work in my life. I want to be that level of a coach, but it's not a requirement for doing good work in the industry, right? At a PCC level, your maturity has gone to a level wherein you're saying, any work that I do will have an impact now, right? Whereas for me, MCC is like, it's like finding the self-actualization concept in Maslow's, saying, okay, now I have, I've got security. I know I'm a coach, right? I've got recognition of being a coach as well now. So I'm being recognized by my peers, by the industry at a PCC level that I'm a decent coach. Then comes the self-actualization in Maslow's. And I think for me, that's the jump. And that's a huge jump in Maslow's as well, if you look at it, right? From the earlier layers to the self-actualization layer. And I think it's there is an Indian context to this. I don't know how to put it out there. It's like, living in a whole, doing a journey, right, which is slightly tough, and becoming that hardened coach and that level of a coach. But I don't know the answer. It might so happen, Malini, that in next 2 years, you might get to hear another credential in between, right? With the new entity that we have created, they might feel the need, what you are thinking of, and say they might come out with those kind of credential and say, hey, let's have a middle credential as well for people to aspire to. Or they might reduce 2,500 hours. So
no, I'm not. I would love to get to a 2,500 hours, and I hope personally that is my vision or whatever I want to do. But somewhere as just another stepping stone at a 1,500 or even 1,700 or something, which kind of helps you to that prop that you get when you're doing that journey. But I think I buy your point to say, let it be really hard for it to be savored and say, I'm one of the 1,000 people on this earth. Thank you, Rajat.
So it's like you're asking for a step, saying, give me a step towards my MCC. And what ICF has said is, make the leap, right? From here to there, right? And can you trust yourself to make that leap? So, but again, I don't know. I will take this and anyway, give it as a feedback, saying this was one of the questions which was asked to me, and I will leave that to the credentialing body and let them, think about it and say, do we want to come out with the 1,700? Okay. So, but at least you'll find an answer for your question, saying, why not there? Right. Thank you so much.
I have a question that, oh, sorry. Could I go ahead?
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you. So I have a question. Maybe this is something that can be taken back to the credentialing body as well. So now I'm looking at not coaches, individuals who have got decades of experience in, how would I put it, using coaching skills. So they're not yet anywhere near credentialed, they're certified, and they've been using coaching skills in their career or business. And so now the realization comes that, look, you've got to go get credentialed, because you know what, this is going to give you that validation. And they begin to think about the fact that they have to start at ACC. So I'm wondering, is there a path? Because with some professional organizations, rather than going through exam route, you can go through a professional route. So I'm just wondering, could there be that consideration so that you've got 30 years experience as opposed to going first through ACC, you go to PCC or MCC? It's really just thinking out of the box. What do you say?
So as of today, right? So you can go directly to PCC. It's not that you have to go to ACC first, Adora, right? So only for MCC, you have to be a PCC, so from a rule perspective. So people who have been coaching in the industry, they can definitely go towards their PCC directly, right? And I would there was this comes from a fact that when you are starting in an industry, right, you are thinking from a direction of saying, hey, how do we provide credentials first? Let it become a standard in the industry. And then when you have matured, even as an organization, like in ICF, you start thinking, now, how do we make, we have got enough people who have got standards and processes and everything, we need to start making it more harder. for people to achieve these, right? So that the quality that is expected from an ICF coach also goes up in the industry, right? So when somebody uses the word, I'm an ICF credentialed coach, the client in front already knows them, okay, you have come through from a very rigorous process and it wasn't easy for you to get there, right? I wouldn't support a concept where it's made easy for somebody who has been coaching for a long time to be at par with somebody who has gone through the whole credentialing process for themselves and done the hard work of getting, that credential. So for me, it's a concept of the PCC is still available to all of those people. They are still coaching. They don't have a problem in gathering those hours because they are continuously coaching. So apply for your PCC credential and get it done, right? MCC, again, is a journey. Not everybody wants to get there, but if this coach who has been there in the market, and I do get to talk to such coaches even today, right, who have been in the market for a long time, and now they are going for their MCCs because they believe they still need to stand out from the market, right? So they are investing, but the good part for them is since they have a clientele, it's easy for them to get those hours. They can still get there faster. And with the amount of experience they have, they don't need a lot of shift for themselves to get into that framework, that competency framework of any of these agencies. So I find it for them also a process of validation then, saying, hey, whatever I have been doing a great job of that. And this is just proving another point, getting that credential. So instead of making it easier, I think it's proving themselves much more at that point. I don't know if I answered your question.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. So the encouragement for such people will be just go straight for PCC. You don't have to go for ACC.
Yes.
And just get that validation using all the hours you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Adora.
Right, Rajat, thank you.
Yes, please.
Adora. Yeah, just on the back of what Adora did say, there are quite a few people who got trained some time ago, and now they've come across ICF and they need to be credentialed. Some of them may have done hours of coaching, whether pro bono or paid for, over the years, and they haven't really gone through the process of logging. For the benefit of many people who are still trying to understand what the process of credentialing is, can you just run us through at least the first level of credentialing and what they need to do to put all that they have in terms of experience together so that they can start the credentialing journey?
Sure. So thank you. So there are 3 paths in ICF from which you can apply for your credential, right? So there is the ACTP path, the ACHTH path, and the portfolio path. So ACTP is a path wherein you will have to go through a 125-hour program towards your PCC, and you can still get your ACC, but it's a longer journey in itself because you have to complete 125 hours. The ACHTH offers you a 60-hour program, and that is a requirement from ICF. For ACC, you need 60 hours of coach training. You need 10 hours of mentoring from a mentor coach. You need 1 recording to be submitted to ICF of a coaching session. And you need to complete 100 hours of coaching experience, which means that you have coached 100 hours for a minimum of 8 clients out there. So, and depending on, have you gone through an approved training or a non-approved training by ICF, you will go through ACHTH path or the portfolio path. The portfolio path opens up for people, who have gone through some training, not really approved by ICF, but then you claim that that was very close to what ICF competencies are. But it has to, but understand that you will have to prove it to ICF when you apply with the content of the training as well, saying this was in line with the competencies of ICF. And only if ICF gets satisfied, then they will approve that training and your portfolio application. So ACHTH path is where you have gone through an approved training provider of ICF, you have done your 60 hours and the rest of the requirements, and then you apply for that path. But your journey, the logging part is 100 hours of coaching. You need to log 100 hours with clients. It could be individual or group clients. It doesn't matter, right? But your log is going to contain the contact information of the client, the phone number, email ID, the name. You'll have to give, is this an individual coaching or a group coaching? You will have to give how many, when did you start this? When did you end this coaching assignment? It could be continuous as well. and how many hours were these paid hours or were these pro bono hours, right? So this is the data that you need to accumulate. So if you have done coach training in the past, sit down with yourself, simply sit down, open an Excel sheet, start with names first. Whatever names come to your head that you think you have coached in life, right? Start writing those names. Forget everything else, how many hours, when did it start? Just start writing names in front of you, right? And then start writing, with this person, what kind of history do I have, right? So how many hours, when would this whole thing would have started with them, ended with them, and how many hours would I have spent on coaching with them? The contact information can be filled after that very easily. But the journey start with the name, then the hours. When did the relationship start? When did it end? How many hours would I have spent? And that's the log you have to create, right? For every level anyways. Does that help, Janet?
Absolutely, thank you. Is there a minimum number of hours you can spend with one person? Is there a minimum, or it doesn't matter?
There is no minimum. You can do a half an hour session as well with one client, right? And that's fine as well. That will be counted as a 0.5 hour in the sheet, right? But you have to have minimum 8 clients that you have worked with. You can't have one client and 100 hours with that client. You have to have 8 clients who you have worked with as an individual clients. Yeah, that's a requirement. Okay, let me move on. So, this is why it all makes sense to the clients out there, right? This is, as ICF coaches, once you're credentialed, this is what you represent. This is what you have inside you. This is the skill set that you have gained during your training and the assessment process, right? ICF now has, this is the new competency model of ICF released this year. And this earlier there were 11 competencies. Now it has been brought down to 8. And each of the training providers across the globe, which give training on coaching from ICF perspective, will train you on these competencies, right? And the first one by default with ICF or anybody else is always the ethical practice. Does this coach demonstrate ethics in their everyday life, right? Are you being ethical, not just with your client, but all kinds of stakeholders? So as a chapter, right? You guys are working as a community together. Are you being ethical towards each other in this chapter? So ICF is not keeping it short in terms of saying you and the client, there's ethical stuff. What ICF says is anybody in this coaching world of yours, you need to showcase, demonstrate ethics with all of those people, right? And we do get cases where a coach has complained against another coach, and not just for business, other reasons, right? So demonstrating ethical practice is the first one. As and when you apply to ICF, the assessor will first always see this competency. If they find a breach in ethics in recording, they will not even review the rest of the recording after that. They will simply, reject the recording on the basis of ethics, right? So this is the core competency of ICF, without which you cannot be a coach as per them, right? Second is embodies a coaching mindset, right? You as a coach, right, at every moment of your own living perspective, do you embody a coaching mindset? Do you think like a coach all the time? Do you prepare yourself for a coaching session? How do you handle emotions when they come in front of you? Are you able to self-manage yourself as a coach? So a client starts crying in front of you. Do you start crying along with them, right? It's okay if you start crying, but do you know how to handle yourself so that you can bring yourself back to the client again? So do you know what's happening to you at all moments? Are you being able to coach yourself then, right? So do you embody a coaching mindset at all times? So the first 2 are about the being of a coach as per ICF. This is who you are as a person, right? The rest of the 6 are about the doing of a coach. This is what you do, in your coaching practice, right? So establishing and maintains agreements. It includes the contract that you sign with the client, the confidentiality bit, everything, all that stuff, as well as the agreement for a session itself. So within a session, are you agreeing on a certain goal for that 1 hour conversation that you're doing, and the success measures and everything else? So are you doing and maintaining those agreement for the session within the session as well? So there's that larger physical world of contracting, and then there is agreements within a coaching conversation, right? Cultivates trust and safety. Earlier, this whole concept was called as trust and intimacy, but then in this new competency framework, it was felt that intimacy might not be the best thing that we want. It's the safety that the client feels. We need to, as coaches, create safe environment for our clients at all times, where they can open up without any fear, any judgment, in terms of they'll be judged, they'll be questioned, whatnot. And that breeds trust. And when somebody has trust, then they will open up much more to you, right? Maintains presence. It's how you are coming across to the client at every moment. Are you being curious? Are you letting them lead the conversation? Are you giving them enough time, and by being quiet and all those kind of, are you working with the whole of the person in that moment and not just the situation? So there are much more nuances in the presence bit. But again, how are you being present to your client? Are you, looking at your phone when the client is talking? You're getting distracted by somebody walking past you in that moment. So are you being present to your client completely and in service to them, right? Next is listens actively. It is beyond the words. I am sure you all have heard this, active listening concept, right? So active listening means I'm not just listening to the words, I'm listening beyond the words. I'm listening through my intuition as well, my sixth sense as well about the client. If I see a smile on my client's face, I create an observation around it. I notice that smile, right? First of all, you just smiled, what happened, right? And it could open up so many pieces just by observing, putting it out there. And that is what active listening is about, saying, look at the client completely and not just the words, right? Evokes awareness. Obviously, this is like the big piece of coaching itself. Unless you're creating awareness, there's no point. So as a coach, your role is to create new awareness for your clients, because that's where the new solutions will come for them to move into, right? So what kind of questions do you ask? How powerful are your questions? Are they helping the client think beyond what they already thought till now, either about themselves or the situation or anything else, right? And finally, facilitate the client's growth. This is the actioning part, right? Are you helping them create those actions, the accountability, figuring out if what will come in the way of them in getting there as well. So helping them create that final piece in the session, which will help them move forward. So these are the 8 competencies that are new competencies as of now from ICF. And I think towards this year end, all coaches will start getting trained on these competencies. Janet, I know I'm top of the hour.
Thank you very much.
This is my last slide.
An important question there from somebody who actually says that he works as a coach in his workplace, so he might not have the time to prospect for clients. So how does he get Credential? Okay,
so when people are working in a company, I tell them that's the most easiest place to get coaching from, because as a role, as a leader in the organization, ICF believes your role is to be a coach in the organization by default. And your salary has a component in terms of you getting paid for acting as a coach within the organization. So if you can create structures, except of your direct reports, everybody else you can create structures within the organization and start coaching them. You can go, if you're not the HR, you can go to the HR and tell them, hey, can we create something? I am becoming a coach and I can help people in this company. And there are enough results to showcase coaching works. So work with your HR in that moment and create those structures. It's very easy for people who are working in corporates to get those hours, and versus an independent coach who has to figure out from their network, right?
Okay, that's Dr. Peter. I hope your question was answered. Okay. Oh, wow. Thank you. Any more questions there?
Gloria says, we really need the high standards to which we as coaches hold ourselves. Absolutely love it. Everybody could do the being part of a coach. The world would be. Thank you, Gloria. I completely agree. Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Does anybody else have any question as we wrap up this evening? I hope your coaching questions were answered. I think the insight here, thank you very much, Rajat, for those insights. And the simple fact that India has gone through what we are going through now, and we hope to get to where you are much faster. much faster. And the idea of people understanding the importance of credentialing, I think it's a journey for all of us. And we believe that at ICF Nigeria, many of us will be credentialed very soon, now that we have, the tools. So we're going to go out there and get it. Thank you very much for everyone. We're being asked if your slides will be available.
I'm just giving my email ID. You can write to me and I'll share them with you.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rajat, for your time. Thank you, everyone, ICF coaches. And if you're not a member of ICF, we would love you to join us, because this is the place to be if you want to take your career to the next level. And indeed, thank you once again. So on behalf of the ICF Nigeria board, I want to say once again, thank you to everyone for joining us. And please look out for more webinars that we have to share with you. On this note, be safe, keep safe, and please stay safe at the same time. Have a great evening. Good night, everyone.
Thank you so much, Janet. Bye, guys. Take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Janet. Thank you, Rajat.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Very useful.
Thank you.
Okay.